Assalamu alaikum, my brothers and sisters. There comes a moment in life when you look at your situation and think, I can't stay like this forever. Something has to change. Maybe your plans fail. Maybe your heart is tired. Maybe every door you knock on stays closed. But what if I told you there is one verse that has helped thousands of people turn their stories around? Not in years, not in months, but in 40 days. A verse that brings openings when everything feels blocked. A verse that creates new paths when you see none. A verse that can shift your life in ways you never expected. Stay with me, because this might be the verse that changes your story too. A heart that knows it deserves a new beginning. Many people move through life carrying a quiet weight they never talk about. They show strength on the outside, yet inside they are tired of repeating the same struggles, facing the same disappointments, and pretending that everything is fine when nothing feels fine. Their heart knows it was created for more, but their reality refuses to change. Every effort feels heavy, every plan becomes delayed, and every step forward somehow slips backward. It is in this hidden exhaustion that a person begins to wonder if their story will ever shift, or if they are destined to live with the same difficulties again and again. What most people don't realize is that moments like these are not signs of failure. They are signs that the soul is ready for transformation. A heart becomes restless not because it is weak, but because it is being prepared for something different, something higher, something more aligned with the purpose it was created for. And when a person reaches this internal crossroads, when they finally admit that they cannot continue with the same patterns, that is when they become open to guidance, open to healing, and open to change. Life often pauses us in uncomfortable places so we can finally listen. The delays we hate can be the protection we need. The setbacks that frustrate us can be the corrections that redirect us. And the stillness that scares us can be the exact environment where a new chapter begins. It is in this state where the heart is tired but hopeful that a person becomes ready to receive a verse capable of reshaping their destiny, a verse that brings clarity where confusion lived and strength where fear used to sit. The verse that quietly rebuilds a broken life. When the heart begins searching for direction, something remarkable starts unfolding within a person even before their tongue moves, even before they reflect on any verse. Their inner world becomes sharper, more aware, more observant of the meaning behind everything they have gone through. They begin noticing how every disappointment shaped their patience, how every delay strengthened their resilience, and how every loss redirected them towards something they didn't know they needed. In this quiet awakening, the verse from Surah At-Talaq, verse 2-3 enters their life like a gentle light that touches wounds they never admitted they had. The verse states, whoever fears Allah, He will make for them a way out, and He will provide for them from where they never expected. This verse is not simply reassuring words. It is a divine map that guides a person from where they are to where they are meant to be. It speaks directly to the soul that feels cornered, reminding it that no hardship is permanent and no setback is stronger than the one who creates relief. It comforts the heart that is tired of trying, teaching it that effort does not vanish into emptiness. It is held, multiplied, and returned at the most meaningful moment. Many people encounter this verse and immediately feel as if it was written for their personal struggle. It speaks to the business owner watching their income collapse despite sincere effort. It speaks to the student who feels opportunities slipping away faster than they can grasp them. It speaks to the parent carrying responsibilities heavier than their strength. It speaks to the young soul standing between dreams and discouragement, uncertain which path to take. The power of this verse lies in how directly it enters a person's situation, not by changing the world around them instantly, but by changing how they experience the world. And when someone chooses to hold on to this verse for 40 consistent days, something shifts deeply inside them. They stop believing they must face everything alone. They stop assuming their future will be a repeat of their past. They start expecting openings not because life suddenly becomes easy, but because their heart finally trusts the promise of the one who never breaks his promises. Slowly, quietly. This verse begins rebuilding the heart from the inside out. Fear gives way to clarity. Doubt gives way to trust. Hopelessness gives way to a calm confidence that better days are not only possible, they are already on their way. This verse becomes the foundation on which a new version of the person begins to rise, steadier, clearer, more grounded, and more certain that no matter how heavy life feels, a way out has already been written for them. When unseen paths begin to move in your favor, a remarkable transformation begins when a person carries the verse from Surah At-Talaq, verse 2-3, not only on their tongue but also in the quiet spaces of their thoughts. They may not notice it at first, because change rarely announces itself with noise. It happens gradually, like dawn breaking after a long night, soft, slow, but unstoppable. Their fears begin to loosen, their stress begins to soften, their heart learns to slow down and breathe again. They start understanding that a closed door does not mean the end of their story. It may simply mean that the door they were begging for was too small for the future they are being prepared for. This is where the unseen workings of destiny start unfolding. Opportunities that were once invisible begin to come into view. Ideas that were scattered suddenly come together with clarity. People they never expected to meet begin entering their life with guidance, support, or direction. Even delays begin to make sense, because they realize that timing is not just a number on a calendar. Timing is a form of divine care. A person who rushes may walk into harm, while a person guided by the promise of a way out walks into protection. Many people describe this stage as the moment when their life stops feeling random. The struggles that once felt like punishment begin to look like preparation. They notice that every difficulty they survived has shaped them into someone wiser, someone stronger, someone more ready for the blessings they used to pray for long ago. Their patience becomes deeper, their expectations become calmer, their trust becomes more mature. This internal shift is more valuable than any outward change, because it builds a foundation the heart can stand on even when circumstances seem unpredictable. And while they continue reciting the verse for 40 days, something even more powerful begins to settle inside them. The understanding that the one who promised a way out is not only capable of changing their situation, but is already arranging every detail behind the scenes. They begin to sense that their story is moving, that their steps are guided, that their efforts are being multiplied in ways they cannot measure. The heaviness that once sat on their chest slowly lifts, replaced by a quiet confidence that relief is not just possible, it is on its way. This is the stage where a person realizes that the verse they are reciting is not only about external change, it is about internal liberation. It frees them from fear, from hopelessness, from believing that life has stopped for them. It helps them finally see a truth they were too overwhelmed to notice before. When the heart truly relies on its Lord, even the paths that once seemed impossible begin to bend in their favor. The 40-day shift that changes how you see your life. As the days pass and a person continues reciting the verse from Surah At-Talaq, verse 2-3, something subtle but life-changing begins to take shape inside them. Their relationship with difficulty evolves. What once felt like a mountain pressing on their chest starts to look like a challenge designed to elevate them rather than break them. They begin to study their life with new eyes, eyes that can finally distinguish between what is truly harmful and what is simply uncomfortable, between what they must let go of and what they must hold on to with patience. This shift doesn't appear suddenly. It builds slowly, almost silently. On the first few days, the heart is still heavy and tired. In the middle of the journey, a person finds themselves battling old thoughts that try to convince them nothing will change. But as they reach deeper into the meaning of the verse, He will provide for them from where they never expected. The heart becomes more disciplined in its trust. It stops panicking over things it cannot control. It stops replaying stories that bring pain. It begins to accept that the path ahead might look different from their expectations, yet still be exactly what they need. By the second or third week, a person often begins to notice a shift in their emotional rhythm. Decisions become clearer. The noise inside their mind quiets. The same problems that felt impossible now seem manageable. Their inner strength becomes more stable, and their reactions become calmer, as if the verse has settled into their heart like an anchor holding them steady through a restless sea. And with this comes a deeper understanding. Relief is not always about the problem disappearing. Sometimes relief is about the heart gaining the strength to rise above the problem. Sometimes the opening is not in the world outside, but in the world within. A person may walk into the same home, the same job, the same challenges, but suddenly they carry themselves differently, lighter, braver, more focused, more at peace. This is the type of transformation that cannot be bought, cannot be learnt in books, and cannot be forced. It grows only when a heart returns to the verse again and again until its meaning becomes a part of the person's identity. As the 40 days progress, a beautiful alignment begins taking place. A person notices patterns they once ignored. They recognize opportunities they would have overlooked. They start feeling guided towards certain decisions and away from others. The heart becomes more intuitive, more connected, more aware that the author of their story is gently guiding them toward a future that makes sense even if their past never did. This awareness turns fear into patience and uncertainty into quiet strength. The verse becomes a companion, a reassurance, a reminder that even when nothing seems to move externally, everything is shifting internally. It teaches the heart that transformation is not meant to be rushed. It grows in layers, in moments, in breaths, until one day a person wakes up realizing that they are no longer living the same story they once cried over. Something within them has changed, and that change begins to reflect in the world around them in unexpected ways. When the promise of the verse begins to touch your reality, by the time a person reaches the later days of this 40-day journey, the verse from Surah At-Talaq, verse 2-3 begins to settle so deeply into their heart that it no longer feels like something they are reading, it feels like something they are living. The promise contained within it starts unfolding in ordinary moments, subtle shifts, and unexpected openings that gently guide them toward a new chapter. The verse states, "Whoever fears their Lord, He will make for them a way out, and He will provide for them from where they never expected." Surah At-Talaq, verse 2-3. These words act like a mirror that reflects parts of life a person never noticed before. They begin to understand that relief does not always arrive in dramatic ways. Sometimes it appears quietly, almost invisibly, in the form of a conversation that brings clarity, a delay that protects them, a new idea that inspires them, or a person who enters their life with guidance they've been longing for. The verse trains them to pay attention to these small signs, recognizing that they are not coincidences, but threads of a larger plan being woven around them. As they continue reciting the verse, their heart becomes more aligned with its meaning. They start believing not theoretically, but genuinely that a way out is always present, even if it is not visible yet. This belief changes the way they move through difficulty. They stop responding with panic and start responding with patience. They stop questioning why things are happening and begin asking what they are meant to learn through them. Their emotional resilience strengthens to a level they never imagined possible. One of the greatest gifts of this verse is how it reshapes a person's relationship with uncertainty. Before, the unknown felt frightening, filled with fear and doubt, but now the unknown becomes a space of possibility. Because the verse clearly states that provision, solutions, and opportunities can come from where they never expected. This teaches the heart to release its narrow expectations and become open to outcomes that are bigger and better than anything it had planned. People often report that around this phase, doors begin to move in ways they could not have predicted. A job offer appears from a place they never applied to. A business that was stagnant begins attracting customers without effort. A relationship that felt broken finds healing through conversations that once seemed impossible. A dream that felt distant suddenly becomes reachable. These moments are not random. They are reflections of the verse manifesting in real life. But perhaps the most powerful change happens within the person themselves. They begin to carry a new strength, not the kind that comes from perfect circumstances, but the kind that comes from trusting a perfect plan. They find themselves waking up with a lighter heart, a clearer mind, and a deeper confidence that their story is moving, even if the movement is slow. The verse becomes a silent companion, reminding them that every step they take make is supported, every effort they make is seen, and every fear they release opens space for something better. The more they lean into the promise of Surah At-Talaq, verse 2-3, the more they realize that change does not always begin with the world around them. Often, it begins with the world inside them, and once the heart shifts, life follows. When the heart finally understands why the delays happen, there comes a stage in the 40-day journey where a person begins to look back on their life with a new level of clarity. The struggles that once felt like punishment now appear as preparation. The disappointments that broke them begin to look like doors redirected. And the prayers they thought were ignored begin to make sense in the grand pattern of their story. It is during this stage that the verse from Surah At-Talaq, verse 2-3, becomes more than a sentence. It becomes a lens through which they understand every chapter of their life. The verse states, "Whoever fears their Lord, He will make for them a way out, and He will provide for them from where they never expected." Surah At-Talaq, verse 2-3. These words slowly unveil their deeper meaning as the days pass. A person who once questioned every closed door now begins to appreciate the protection behind it. They realize they were saved from paths that would have drained them, relationships that would have broken them further, opportunities that would have pulled them away from their purpose. They recognize that not receiving something immediately does not mean they were denied. It means they were being prepared for something different, something designed with greater wisdom. During this phase, the heart becomes more reflective. A person starts reviewing moments they once resented and sees them with new wisdom. The job that didn't work out protected them from a future they couldn't handle. The friendship that ended freed them from emotional damage they didn't yet understand. The financial struggle developed discipline they now rely on. The silence they once hated became the space where their soul rebuilt itself. Every painful moment begins to gain meaning, like puzzle pieces finally forming a picture. And while they recite the verse daily, a new internal balance forms. Their heart is no longer tossed around by circumstances. Instead, it becomes anchored in the understanding that every movement in their life, whether forward, sideways, or paused, carries purpose. They begin to let go of impatience and embrace progress that is slow, steady, and meaningful. They find themselves less concerned with deadlines and more focused on alignment. They don't force outcomes anymore, they prepare for them. They don't chase people anymore, they attract what matches their new level of strength and clarity. This transformation is not loud, it is not dramatic. It unfolds quietly within the heart, reshaping how a person responds to life. They begin waking up with peace instead of panic. They approach challenges with strategy instead of fear. They become grounded, thoughtful, and deeply aware that their story is being guided in ways beyond their comprehension. They stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and instead begin asking, "What is this preparing me for?" And as this internal maturity grows, the verse begins manifesting externally as well. The heart that once felt scattered becomes focused. The emotions that once felt heavy become manageable. New paths emerge not through force, but through alignment. A person begins hearing about opportunities they never imagined, meeting individuals who guide them toward better choices, noticing solutions that were always there but were invisible behind the noise of panic and worry. This is the stage where they finally understand the second part of the verse. He will provide for them from where they never expected, to talamdamu mamfa, because now they are living it. They see relief arriving through unexpected channels. They see support coming from people they barely knew. They see breakthroughs growing out of moments they once considered failures. They begin to realize that nothing in their life was wasted. Not the tears, not the delays, not the heartbreaks, not the disappointments. Everything was part of a design leading them toward the person they are becoming. This chapter of the journey teaches them the most empowering truth. When the heart truly trusts the one who wrote their story, they stop rushing their life. They understand that the timing of their journey is not late, it is precise. They begin to appreciate the slowness, because slowness has been shaping them into the version of themselves that can finally carry the blessings they once prayed for. In this stage, the verse no longer feels like a promise they hope for. It feels like a promise they are witnessing unfold quietly, perfectly, day by day. When your life finally steps into the new chapter written for you, as the 40 days draw closer to their end, something profound begins to rise inside a person who has held onto the verse from Surah At-Talaq, verse 2-3, with consistency, sincerity, and hope. It is not simply a change in their circumstances, though that often comes, but a transformation so deep within their heart that they no longer resemble the person who began this journey. Their fears have softened, their doubts have weakened, their inner voice has become clearer, and their entire perspective on life has shifted towards strength, gratitude, and trust. Throughout these 40 days, they carried the divine promise. Whoever fears their Lord, He will make for them a way out, and He will provide for them from where they never expected. Surah At-Talaq, verse 2-3. At first, these words felt like encouragement. Later, they felt like reassurance. But now, they feel like truth experienced, truth witnessed, truth lived. They begin to notice how their life has reorganized itself in ways they could not have orchestrated alone. The confusion that once clouded their decisions slowly fades, replaced with a new clarity that seems almost effortless. They begin making wiser choices without overthinking, because the heart that trusts deeply is no longer in conflict with the mind. They feel guided not by desperation, but by understanding, not by emotion, but by purpose. And as they move through their days, they gradually discover that the way out promised in the verse does not always appear as a single moment of breakthrough. Sometimes it appears as a series of small shifts. A conversation that changes how they view a problem, a new idea that solves an old difficulty. A person who offers help at the perfect time, a door opening slowly instead of suddenly, a path clearing one step at a time. They begin to appreciate these subtle transformations because they now understand something they never saw before. A new life is not delivered in one moment. It grows through a collection of moments that prepare the heart to handle it. By this stage, the heart becomes deeply aware of how far it has come. The nights of crying that once felt unbearable now feel like the very moments that softened and purified their soul. The silence they once resented now feels like the space where they rebuilt their strength. The delays they once feared now feel like the perfect timing that aligned them with opportunities they would have missed if life had moved faster. And then something beautiful happens. The person begins living from a place of quiet confidence. They no longer chase people, outcomes, or answers. They no longer wonder if their story will change. Instead, they walk with the calm certainty that their story is already changing, even if the final form has not yet appeared. They move through each day with a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that every step is supported and every effort is multiplied. This is also the stage where blessings begin to enter naturally. The heart that once felt blocked becomes a magnet for goodness. The mindset that once feared failure becomes open to learning. The spirit that once felt heavy now stands tall with resilience. People around them notice the change they see, the calmness in their eyes, the stability in their decisions, the peace in their presence. They may not know what happened, but the person knows it is the verse, the meaning of the verse, and the transformation that the verse brought into their life. They begin to experience provision from where they never expected, in ways both small and significant. A struggle they battled for years suddenly becomes manageable. A financial door opens from an unexpected source. An opportunity that once seemed impossible becomes reachable. A connection appears at the perfect moment. But more than anything, their inner world becomes their greatest blessing. A heart that no longer breaks at every difficulty. A mind that no longer collapses under pressure. And a soul that finally feels held, guided, and supported. By the end of the 40 days, the person realizes something that moves them deeply. The verse did not only change their story, it changed them. And because they changed, the story had no choice but to follow. This final chapter becomes a reminder that transformation is not magic, it is a journey. A journey that begins with one verse, one intention, one step, and continues with patience, sincerity, and trust. The person no longer looks at their life with fear or regret. They look at it with hope, because they now understand that even the hardest chapters were leading them to this new beginning. And when they look back at where they started, they cannot deny the truth. The promise of Surah Talaq, verse 2-3, did not just touch their life, it rewrote it. My dear brothers and sisters, if you have listened until this point, it means your heart is searching for change, for direction, for a new beginning. And maybe This is the moment your story turns a page. You have just heard a promise that never fails. A promise written for the tired, the discouraged, the overwhelmed, and the ones who feel stuck between who they are and who they want to become. The verse from Surah At-Talaq, verse 2-3, is not only a message, it is an invitation. An invitation to trust the process, to trust the timing, and to trust the one who has never abandoned you in any chapter of your life. If you decide to begin your 40-day journey, do it with sincerity, do it with hope, and do it with the belief that your life can shift in ways you cannot imagine. Doors can open, hearts can heal, opportunities can rise, your story can move again. And if this reminder touched you, write in the comments, my new